Hello, old school random comic book reviews. Okay, this time I have got WildCATS number 4 from 1993. $2.50, published by Image Comics. Brandon Choi and Jim Lee, creators and story. Jim Lee pencils, Scott Williams inks, and Joe Chiodo colors. Let's see here. On the inside cover, the first thing is there's a little editorial, basically talking about, apologizing for, comics being late and stuff like that. And they talk about how I can't say his name, but Weiss Portacio's sister passed away and stuff like that. And so we get into the story. Basically, this is part 4 of the first story arc. We open up and the big bad guy here is Hellspont, and he's saying, "Victory is mine. Reunification begins now." And basically, the WildCATS have teamed up with Youngblood, who is Rob Liefeld's super team creation, and also then Vice President um, Dan Quayle is there. So basically, what had happened in previous issues, the bad guys had disguised themselves, or rather taken over Dan Quayle's body, and la-di-da-di-da, and that's over with. And now it looks like, as we open up, it looks like most of the WildCATS are unconscious, and Youngblood guys have come in, and Voodoo is the only WildCAT member who's standing right now. And basically, there's a sort of fight, and they're zapping at each other, and it has something to do with a mystical power source called the Orb that Hellspawn is going to use to, become all-powerful. And so we go through the comic, and we see where Spartan, who's kind of an android, had been beaten up and thrown down some shaft or whatever. I'm not sure he's not in the sewers, but he's like in the bottom of the basement of the building or whatever the heck it is, and he grabs the energy grid, and he just grabs onto it, and it looks like he's trying to cause an energy feedback, and then things start blowing up, and now the other WildCAT members are starting to wake up, and Jacob Marlowe, who's more or less the leader, is saying Spartan, or no, he says, "Warblade, Spartan bought us some time, but I need to Hellspont distracted a little longer. Don't let him reach those control panels." And then so Warblade leaps up, and Warblade's thing is his fingers turn into these large knives or whatever, and he's jumping at him, and he says, "Heads up, Hellspont, it's sudden death overtime." And he starts slashing at Hellspont, and they're having a fight there. And Hellspont starts to run away, and he's charged up, and he's stopped, and he's ready to fist fight. And all the other WildCAT guys have kind of woken up, and they're trying to stop Hellspont. But then, lo and behold, where Hellspont gets to the orb, he finds that the other bad guys that he had teamed up with previously have double-crossed them, and they've taken the orb for themselves. And then so they turn against Hellspont, and so there's a fight between Hellspont and the other bad guys, and then the WildCAT guys jump in, and there's a big brawl, and then there's Jacob Marlowe, and he pulls a gun on one of the bad guys named Gnome, who's taking the orb, and he's going to try to do whatever, and then Jacob shoots his arm off, and the arm falls down some shaft or whatever, still holding the orb, and Gnome the bad guy leaps after it, trying to catch it or whatever, and then things are still blowing up in the building or whatever. And at this point, the Youngblood guys, not knowing exactly what's going on, but they grab Dan Quayle and they run out of the building, and then the building, there's a big splash page where the building, they get out, the building blows up completely. And they walk around, they don't see anything, and they don't know what's going on. All they can find is Spartan's like burnt up android body, and they're like, "Oh wow, don't count this." Uh-oh, what's going on now? Okay, Okay, and so then we turn the page and we find out that the Wildcats actually have gotten away, and they're on their plane and they're toasting champagne to celebrate their victory. And then Voodoo's kind of sad because she thinks like Spartan has died, but then Jacob Marlowe takes everybody in back and shows them that they have another Spartan body, and they'll just get them reprogrammed and everything will be up and going again. And in the very last page is an epilogue, and a guy buys a paper from a kid, and we don't know who this guy is. I'm not 100% sure. It might have been a guy named Lynch, who was kind of like the Wildstorm equivalent of Nick Fury back in those days. And then we give let's see here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4-page preview of a comic that was supposed to be coming out called Tribe. And I think there was one issue came out that was kind of a big hit. I think they may have done a second issue, and then I think that was the end of Tribe. And let's see here, that's pretty much it. There aren't a whole lot of ads in this comic. There's an ad for a card playing game. There's an ad for let's see here, Wildcat Zero, ad for Stormwatch comic, and let's see here, ad for Cyberforce, guest starring Pitt. And what else do we have? We've got the image, we got the editorial page here that has some announcements for upcoming comics: Supreme, Wildcat, Savage Dragon, Spawn. And this, I'm not sure everybody knows, when the image started, Wildstorm, Rob Liefeld's comics, and the Spawn universe were all loosely interconnected. The idea was going to be they were going to have like one universe the way they do at Marvel and DC, but each universe would be creator owned and creator owned, but they would still do crossovers and tie-ins and things like that. Now, of course, that doesn't go on so much anymore. If you followed anything about Wildstorm Force, they booted out Jim Lee and this and that, and some people kept doing comics and some people stopped doing them, and all this sort of thing. So of course that image is pretty much just all creator owned stuff with their own separate storylines and things like that. But in the early days of Image, you would see what was that character, Wild Star, guest starring in Savage Dragon. You'd see references to the different comic book universes in other comics and stuff like that. So that was kind of interesting, and that's pretty much it. It's actually a pretty fun comic book, I think. It's not avant-garde or anything like that. It's not Watchmen. It pushes the boundaries just a little bit as far as like the level of violence, but it's not too over the top. It's basically story-wise, it's everything you would have gotten from a typical comic book at that time, a typical Marvel, DC, whatever, just jacked up a little bit. It's like an X-Men comic or a Justice League comic or something like that on adrenaline, and you got some really nice, it's kind of cliched in that sort of way, I wanted to say, but it still works as what it is. You got some really nice art from Jim Lee. This is probably my favorite period of Jim Lee art. He did some some nice stuff when he went to DC and started doing stuff like the Hush series and stuff like that. But that mid-80s or not mid-80s, mid-90s Jim Lee stuff is actually my favorite work of his. Okay, and that's pretty much it. I got to thank you very much for listening, and you have a good day.